As you can see, kelp farming is increasing in popularity in Maine, and the yields are increasing year after year.
It's also a natural ocean cleaner because it absorbs carbon. And as News Center Maine's Jack Mulmid shows us, there is new research looking into the possibility of kelp harnessing more carbon than we once thought, creating new potential to help out our oceans amid a changing climate.
Atlantic Sea Farms in Biddeford.
Come on down.
We're getting an up-close look
Welcome to Kelp HQ.
at the very first stages of what will be next year's edible kelp harvest. Hugh Suskiewicz is the seaweed scientist for the facility, caring for the kelp in its most vulnerable stage.
By design, each one of these tanks is its self-contained loop.
His colleagues call him Dr. Kelp. Just listening to him talk is like listening to a compelling lecture.
That's the very beginning of what we call the sorus. And that is where all of meiosis occurs, where the division of the cells to form the spores.
Hugh walks us through the life cycle of farmed kelp, beginning, of course, with the planting.
It's a PVC tube wrapped in a very special kind of cultivation twine.
If you don't see them, that's okay.
The life cycle of kelp starts off extremely small, and just to visualize how small it is, by the time April comes, one of these tanks here is going to produce hundreds of thousands of pounds of kelp.
The microscopic kelp in this room is responsible for nearly 85% of cultivated kelp grown nationwide. And like farming on land, it's a lot of hard work, making sure that conditions are right during a tricky time in their development. Later, when the kelp has grown, they act as a natural filter, not only cleaning the ocean, but absorbing carbon.
Our oceans are getting more and more acidic. So as the kelp is growing, it's creating this halo environment around the kelp farm where it's sucked up extra nutrients and it's actually raised the pH. So it's countering, in a very local sense, it being too acidic.
Less acidic ocean water is the immediate effect, but all that kelp could also have an added benefit.
Hello, I direct our Center for Seafood Solutions.
At Bigelow Labs in Booth Bay Harbor, Dr. Nicole Price has been busy at work studying kelp in Maine.
Pretty much since I got started at Bigelow. So since 2014, which is about 8 years now.
Her research indicates kelp may also help fight global warming.
We're studying how kelp can absorb carbon as it grows from that microscopic life stage up to several feet long. It also might mean that kelp could contribute to true carbon sequestration or removal of carbon from the global carbon cycle. This could happen if fragments of the kelp break off while it's growing and become buried deep in marine sediments. If that process is truly happening, then that carbon is sequestered or removed and can mitigate climate change issues.
In short, much like a tree, kelp absorbs that carbon falling out of the atmosphere and dissolving in seawater. What Nicole is doing at Bigelow is trying to see if, as kelp decays and floats to the seafloor, it brings the captured carbon with it. The kelp would then get buried by sediment, permanently removing the carbon from the atmosphere and reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
So we're just at the cutting edge of trying to figure out what seaweeds can do for our climate change issues.
Nicole says the technology to track carbon being trapped by kelp is still very new.
It's easy to measure carbon in sediment. It's very hard to attribute that carbon to a seaweed that was farmed.
With groundbreaking research into the benefits of kelp, those involved in making money off it are watching.
It's grown quite rapidly, and that's a good thing, but it's important to make sure that it's done responsibly.
Nathan Johnson says he was one of the first independent farmers to sell kelp and says kelp is a growing resource for fishermen growing dependent on lobster.
It's also an opportunity for me to kind of bridge the gap between my father's generation, which continues to fish in lobster, and my children's generation.
The ways kelp can give back to the environment are still being studied, but seeing what starts as a microorganism grow to a massive edible harvest is a sign of hope, especially for fishermen seeing fewer fish in their nets, who are now finding another way to make a living on the water.
Being able to work on the water in April with my father on one side and one of my sons on the other is really, I feel that we all have a responsibility to kind of make the world a better place, and being a bridge between the existing fisheries and the future coastal economies is something that I am very grateful for.
Adding another balance of resources to Maine's working waterfronts with groundbreaking research on the horizon. Jack Mulmid, News Center, Maine.